An early transfer has already been made ahead of Game Week 6 and I plan on making another one tonight. So in this video, I'm going to discuss exactly who I've brought into the team, who I've sold, and importantly, who is next in line to come into this team to get me back into that top 100k. So if you're looking forward to today's video, make sure you do drop a like and of course, smash that subscribe button. And without further ado, let's get into today's video. Okay, so as I mentioned, I have made one free transfer already. I had two with 1 million in the bank, but one player that isn't part of that transfer strategy is going to be Jordan Pickford. Now, the Pickford-Turner rotation has been absolutely diabolical. We've seen no clean sheets from the goalkeepers that we've started. However, I don't think it is worth making a goalkeeper transfer for this week for my personal team. Do I think there are better goalkeepers out there? Absolutely, but most teams are struggling to keep clean sheets right now. You wouldn't believe me when I tell you that Chelsea's Sanchez is joint top for clean sheets so far with only 2. That kind of highlights the situation we're in right now. And yes, there might be other teams to jump on. Maybe you spend a bit more on getting Nick Pope of Newcastle. I just don't really think it suits my personal team right now. And Everton's fixtures in 7 and 8 look okay. We could see an Everton clean sheet later down the line. Do I think it will happen this game week? Probably not. But could he accumulate saves in a fixture away against Brentford? Absolutely. And because of that, I'm going to stick for Pickford and just accept and pray that I may get a 3-pointer in this game week. Now, moving into the defenders, and this is where the first problem child arises. 2 that I'm more than happy to own is Estupiñán and Ruben Diaz. Diaz has been a pretty disastrous transfer for my FPL teams. I brought him in for steady clean sheets and he has delivered 0 over that period. I'm hoping I can get a bit of luck in this fixture at home against Nottingham Forest. And Estupiñán was the reason why we weren't selling him in Game Week 5 for this brilliant home fixture against Bournemouth. Now, it's worth noting, we're going into the first game week off the back of European Cup competitions. And Estupiñán played 100 minutes in that Europa League game. So could we see Tariq Lamptey start at left back for Brighton? Potentially, but it isn't enough information for us to sell Estupiñán with this plum fixture at home against Bournemouth. I'm just going to let it be what it will be. I'll let the FPL gods control the situation. And the same will apply to Ruben Diaz, who obviously played midweek. Could we see him benched in game week 6? Potentially, but we just don't have the information right now to justify selling either of those players. A player that is a little bit of a worry right now is going to be Ben Chilwell, who was benched in game week 5, and we saw him have early substitutions in previous game weeks before that. Now, there's a home fixture against Aston Villa, which isn't amazing, but we do need to know that Aston Villa did have a midweek fixture where they did bench some of their big boys like Diaby, Watkins, Douglas Luiz. So a lot of those have had rest going into this weekend fixture. So Villa are still going to be really strong going into the fixture away against Chelsea. And Chilwell is a big problem from a minutes perspective. And I'm going to quickly touch on who I think the best replacements are. Now, it's worth noting, first and foremost, I don't think Chilwell is a desperate sell at all. Hopefully, in today's press conference from Pochettino, he might give us a bit of an indication that Chilwell will be back in the team or he won't. However, this is a quote taken from, I believe, pre-game against Bournemouth, where he opted for Mudryk basically because we normally have been playing with Chilwell. We want a more offensive player and keep the back four. And other quotes from Pochettino have said that he doesn't want the fullbacks to be bombing forward to affect the wingers and their positioning. So that is why Colwell has been playing at left back, basically playing more of an orthodox left back role, and Chilwell coming on as a left wing substitute for Mudryk. So I'm a little bit confused right now. Is Chilwell a left winger in this Chelsea team under Pochettino, or is he seen as a left back in this team? Right now, we probably have to argue that Chilwell is competing for his place alongside Mudryk. And with Sterling, Cole Palmer, all these players able to play in those positions, I think Chilwell is still perfectly fine to hold, but a risk that you know that is going to be an issue later down the line potentially. And for that very reason, I think selling Chilwell for my team is the right move. And spoiler alert, I have already sold Ben Chilwell. Now, looking at the top 3 replacements, I think Matty Cash is the 3rd best in terms of a game week 6 transfer. Away against Chelsea, could he score? Could he get a clean sheet? Potentially. Chelsea's attack is pretty blunt, but I don't think he's the best transfer for game week 6. I think both Botman and Trippier are better buys with the away fixture against Sheffield United. Now, I actually think Botman is really close to Trippier because years gone by, Trippier is just obvious transfer, but with a 2 million difference, I think we could make the argument that Botman is the better value pick, especially if later down the line you are looking to maybe bring in Mo Salah as part of a free transfer strategy. Then all that money in the bank is going to be needed for you to enable that move. So Trippier might block you from doing that. But if money is not a problem, I think Trippier is the man to go for. 12 crosses in game week 5. We know he's a bonus point magnet, and I do think attacker returns are going to come for him. Could we see rotation with Trippier, Botman, Shah? Potentially with the Champions League. But until we actually see that, I don't think we need to make them assumptions right now. And Newcastle do need to get some points on the board in the Premier League after quite a ropey start to the season. So if you have the money available, Trippier is the number 1 replacement. Otherwise, I think Botman is a perfectly fine alternative to him. And with all that said and done, I have already pulled the trigger last night on Ben Chilwell to Kieran Trippier. Now, I was umming and ahhing whether to go for Botman at 2 million cheaper because I think there's definite logic behind it. But right now, off the back of a really bad game week last week, I want to go for the real upside player. Now, I think a lot of the FPL community are going to have Newcastle defenders, if not double ups, because the wildcard is very popular this week. And I think double Newcastle is going to be very, very active in the community. So having no Newcastle defence is quite a scary prospect. So although I think Chilwell could definitely start against Villa, I wanted to bring in a Newcastle defender, and Chilwell was that cash cow. Trippier for me is the high upside pick, and I think if any defender is going to get the goal, assist, clean sheet combination, he is going to be the one in that Newcastle team. So he has come into my team, which has left me with 0.2 million in the bank and 1 free transfer available. Now, moving into the midfielders, there are a few other problems that have emerged in my team. Now, Mbeumo at home against Everton is not one of those. And yes, Maddison and Saka are playing against one another, but I don't really deem those as desperate transfers out because Saka long-term looks good still, and I don't really want to sell my Arsenal investment because I still rate Arsenal as one of the top 3 teams in the league. And Spurs look very, very good going forward. I know they were a little bit dicey against Sheffield United, but I think Maddison is just one of those that's going to play guaranteed 90 minutes at the heartbeat of everything good in that team. And I just don't think I really desperately want to sell him. Yes, could I come down to someone like a Diaby at Aston Villa? Potentially, but the entry point doesn't feel right away against Chelsea. And I think Spurs will score against Arsenal. I'm feeling good about that fixture. Even though I don't think they'll beat Arsenal, I think there could be goals. And I think Maddison could definitely be at the heart of that. So I'm not rushing to sell him. The 2 that have been on my mind is Bruno Fernandes and Marcus Rashford. Man United are just so hard to predict right now. Sometimes when you're paying quite a high price for 8.5 for Fernandes, 9 million for Rashford, I want to buy players in teams that are very, very stable, and Man United are far from that right now. The only thing I would say is the alternatives for me to sell them to aren't really screaming out. I don't have the money in the bank to go to Mo Salah, otherwise I definitely would have sold Bruno Fernandes to Mo Salah this game week. That wasn't an option for my personal team. Going down to Diaby, as I mentioned, it doesn't really scream the right move. Going to Eze, yes, a great fixture this week, but do I want him more than Bruno over the next 3? Probably not. And I'm not going to be going to Son this game week. So, on the face of it, even though I don't like having double Man United midfield, I feel like for my team, it is worth just keeping them for this game week and really, really hoping that even if they don't get a positive result against Burnley, they do actually get some goals. And Rashford and Bruno, we know, are going to play 90 minutes in that game, and one of those is going to be on penalties regardless. So, although I'm reluctant, I am going to keep the Man United double midfield for at least 1 more week and hope they repay the favour with some goals. Okay, so moving into the forwards, and no, I haven't finished off with the problems in this team. Of course, Erling Haaland isn't one of those, but Nicholas Jackson definitely is. He has accumulated some serious expected goals over the opening 5 game weeks, but he just hasn't put the ball in the net. And he is getting very, very frustrating right now as a long-term owner over this period, especially when we're seeing the likes of Julian Alvarez at a cheaper price, playing in a better team, getting the goals and the assists that we really thought Nicholas Jackson was going to. So with my 1 free transfer available, Jackson to another player is definitely on the cards right now. But I just want to quickly touch on why we should sell Jackson, or maybe why we shouldn't. So I've got a slide up here on whether we should be selling Jackson going into game week 6. And although it seems all doom and gloom, I do think there are some sort of glimmers of hope for Nicholas Jackson. So you can see the underlying numbers at the top of your screen here. As I mentioned, he's accumulated an XG of 4.1 and he's only scored 1 goal. The only player to have a better XG as a forward in the league is Erling Haaland. No surprises there. So one would argue that he has been very unlucky. I get it. A lot of people making the argument that Nicholas Jackson isn't a good finisher. And what I've seen so far, yes, he isn't a better finisher than Erling Haaland. However, If he was to continue at this rate right now, I just do not see a world where he continues to be missing these big chances that he's accumulating. If he continues to get what we're looking at right now, 4.1 XG in 5 fixtures, he will score eventually. 100% I am confident of that. And you can see the disparity here between expected FPL points at 29.02 and actual FPL points of only 11. So, as I mentioned, I think long term over the course of the season, Nicholas Jackson will regress to the mean and we will see him scoring goals. Will it be at the level of Erling Haaland? Absolutely not. Will he continue to be frustrating? Absolutely. But I don't think it is going to be as bad as what we've seen in the opening 5 game weeks. And Chelsea as a whole have not been as bad as a lot of people are making out. I've just put here, are Chelsea a bad team? They're currently 4th best for expected goals at 10.64. And they're currently 4th best for expected goals conceded at 5.85. So no, it isn't all doom and gloom with Chelsea. I just think they are really struggling in the final third to put the ball in that net. And of course, with Nicholas Jackson being the heartbeat of that and everything that funnels through, he is going to be the scapegoat in this team naturally. But look, I'm not saying that he is not all an angel in this situation. I definitely get why we want to sell him. The problem is his game time going to be at risk? And I do think he has been kind of given the luxury of guaranteed game time in the opening 5 game weeks because there's been no other alternatives available. Pochettino has spoken about Armando Broja and his love for him, and he is back in full training. Now, do I expect Broja to start in game week 6? Absolutely not. But we should get some indication in today's press conference whether Broja is available for game week 6. If it is, then game time is starting to be a little bit more ropier for Jackson in the coming game weeks. As I think what will happen is Jackson will start Broja off the bench, and we may even see a switch eventually where if Jackson continues to be missing these big chances, Broja eventually gets that start in the team because Chelsea don't have Europa League or Champions League to give game time to these players. So we've got to do it in the Premier League. And the other thing we need to know is Jackson is on 4 yellow cards, 1 yellow card away from a 1-game ban. And this has got all the recipes for a disaster here. I could see a situation where Broja's on the bench in game week 6, Jackson gets suspended, can't play in game week 7, Broja starts, scores, and then Jackson is on the bench from game week 8 onwards. Now again, that is just a narrative that I've created, but one that definitely could happen. The one thing I would say is Jackson's yellow cards have all been for dissent. I'd like to think Pochettino has said to him, mate, stop complaining because you're going to get banned otherwise. And I think that probably will happen. So, should you sell Jackson going into game week 6? I do not think he is much of a desperate transfer as other managers are making out. If you are looking to do a points hit to sell him, I wouldn't do it. I would simply start him in this fixture at home against Aston Villa because the numbers are still fantastic. However, if you have multiple transfers available, then I do think selling him is a logical move. And I'm going to discuss who my top transfer is. And if you're a wild card, you simply aren't picking Nicholas Jackson in your team. So, as you can see on your screens here, Alvarez is currently in my game week 6 team, but I haven't actually pulled the trigger yet. Now, it's worth noting from a personal note, I'm at a wedding on the Saturday, so I will not see any of the Man City early team leaks going up until the 1:30 PM UK time deadline. It is worth noting, if you are waiting up until that moment, make sure you pull the trigger as soon as we get those team leaks. But I won't have that luxury, so moving early to Alvarez is going to be regardless for me in this strategy. So Jackson to Alvarez is the obvious transfer for my team. Could I go to Colton Morris? Absolutely, but I just think Alvarez at home against Forest, away against Wolves. Alvarez is in a situation where the other alternatives in the game are either carrying knocks or aren't really getting the game time under Pep. Grealish has only just returned back to full training. Bernardo Silva is a slight risk. I don't see anyone else who can operate in those positions behind Erling Haaland. And now it's worth noting, we discussed about Jackson being an underperformer. Alvarez has actually been an overperformer in this system. But what I want to say is this. Alvarez at 6.9 million, playing in a team who accumulate the most XG as a team alongside Brighton. And he is playing 90 minutes in this fixture. Yes, he might be overperforming his stats, but he's still going to accumulate massive chances for his teammates because they simply dominate games. And do I think Jackson could outscore Alvarez in this fixture? Absolutely, because as I said, the underlying numbers are better for Jackson. But I just think right now, Alvarez with a free transfer just makes complete sense. Being on set pieces, playing in the best team in the league, and with a plum fixture home against Nottingham Forest. I think this is a transfer that I can't ignore, and I will most likely, off the back of the press conferences, sell Nicholas Jackson for Julian Alvarez. So that will leave my team looking like this, with a bench of Turner, Kabore, Udogie, and Mabama. Pretty obvious benching here. No player there would really argue starting in my team. And with the captaincy situation, I would then put the captaincy on Erling Haaland with the vice captaincy on Julian Alvarez. Yes, guys, okay, so that's going to wrap up today's video. I really hope it's provided some value. As I mentioned, I've already sold Chilwell to Trippier, and I plan on selling Nicholas Jackson to Alvarez after the press conferences. I will update you if I ever make those moves or not. But if you do want to stay up to date with everything, make sure you do check out my Patreon. Link is in the bio, where I update all my Patreons exactly when I make my specific moves and answer any of their one-to-one questions all the way up until the Game Week 6 deadline. That just leaves us to say thank you so much for tuning in. If you can, drop a like and smash that subscribe button, it'll be massively appreciated. And I'll see you in the next one. Take care. Cheers.